And we're back with part 2 of what we're calling socialism, but we don't like to call things like that because it's not a good term, but heck, that's what we're calling it. How about we call it capital, labor, government, and unions? Capital, labor, government, unions, oh my. Speaking of oh my, did you check out the reading about the Wizard of Oz and its connections to socialism, capitalism, farmers, industrial America? That was in our reading. It's pretty cool, I thought. Pretty cool. All right, so I made up some prop cards here. And over here on my left, which is what sort of socialists and communists and Democrats are over on the left, we have socialism, left, public things owned by the public, the government. Which is you and me, is it? You and me? And we have capitalism, right, private. We'll put that over here on the right. So those are our two extremes, the left and the right. And in the middle, I'm going to kind of put this thing, we'll call this maybe, I don't know, wild card, government regulation. Government regulating, but not owning the means of production. So the government regulating but not owning stuff. Now that's important to keep in mind, and unions were more of a part of that. So we'll put that sort of in the middle here. All right, I've got some cards here of things that make up American life and whether they should be socialist or capitalist or whatnot. Okay, so here's a good one to start with. This one's pretty good. Electricity. Ooh, I like electricity, right? That's something new in the time period of our class. Think of 75,000 years without electricity. Electricity's unbelievable. Ask people in Texas. We'll get to that. So electricity, should electricity be completely private, owned by the government, or somewhere in between? Well, I can tell you what it currently is. It is private, however, I'm putting it in the middle because it is heavily regulated by the government, a little less so than it used to be. But everyone is entitled to electrical hookup, right? You have to pay if you have a new house to get the wire to come in. But the power company can't say, sorry, I'm not signing you up, Berninger. I don't like what you do with electricity. We're all entitled to it. It is regulated. In New York State, the electric company actually has to go to the state and ask if they can raise the rates. Now, did you follow what was happening in Texas when it got so unbelievably cold that transmission lines and people lost power because they needed too much? Well, Texas has very little regulation of their electrical grid and their power sources for their electricity. They don't even, their electricity is not even tied into the whole country like most states because they didn't want to be regulated by the federal government. And because they didn't regulate it, private companies didn't do a good job preparing it for cold weather. And they also set it up that when demand goes up, price goes up. So when it was 10 degrees in Texas, very rare, the electrical grid wasn't working well because of the cold temperatures. And people were using a lot more natural gas and electricity. And the prices went from like, $100 a month to $16,000 a month for some people because demand was so high. Not good. Anyway, so electricity, we're going to put that here. They are private companies. However, they're heavily government regulated. Should they be more socialist? Should they be more private? Electricity works pretty well. So we're going to put that sort of right here. Then my favorite example, the shoe factory, right? So if the shoe factory is owned by the government, theoretically, all of the money that people spend on shoes gets channeled back to the people who are at the machines making the shoes, right? That's good socialism, right? People power. If I spend $100 on a pair of shoes, that $100 gets into the pockets of the worker. That, or if it's completely private, Then you have a private company, Shoe Company Incorporated. And Shoe Company Incorporated, the people in charge of that were like, we're keeping as much of that $100 that Berninger spent on shoes, and we're going to give the workers as little as possible. Ha 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 ha. However, we have competition. We have multiple shoe companies that fight for keeping prices low. And most shoes are made overseas in horrible conditions in factories. So that's why, $100 is a lot of money for shoes. So shoe factory, I got to put it over here. It's currently very private. There are no government shoe factories. They are somewhat regulated, work safety, but no. Fire department. Every time if your house catches on fire, you have to call a couple fire departments and get bids, and they'll be like, for $1,000 we'll come put it out. And you're like, I'm going to call another fire department. No, fire departments in our area are completely volunteer. However, the government buys the trucks usually, right? Either in one way or another. So, and in cities, where fires can destroy, a third of the city, if left uncontrolled, fire departments are definitely volunteer in our area, but the money for the trucks mostly comes from the government. And in cities, they are government funded because, that's pretty important, fire protection, right? Fire protection is important. You don't want competition, you want it done right, and that's very socialist, isn't it? Police, you want a private police force, right? You have to call and pay somebody by the hour to come be a cop. No, police are generally socialist. They don't want to hear that, but that's true. Roads, should there be competition? Should there be 2 or 3 roads next to each other, and you got a big truck so you can drive on the cheap road that has potholes? Roads are socialist, right? Roads are socialist. We all put tax money in. And roads get built. Now there's taxes on gasoline, so roads are socialist. What about iPhones, folks? What about iPhones? They are definitely private, right? Most of your iPhones are made by Foxconn, a company in China. And I don't know what an iPhone costs. I don't own one. But let's say in America, an iPhone of $600. Kind of an average price, I think, depending on which one you get, plans. I know it's and it's $600 because it's made in difficult, unsafe working conditions where a Chinese worker makes $100 a week. Clean working conditions, but long, hard, those things are handmade. If the the iPhone was made in America, capitalism, it'd be about $2,000 because workers would get paid more. But at any rate, I don't think everyone needs an iPhone, though most people have one. So everybody needs roads, police, and fire department, but there's no big benefit with everyone owning an iPhone. So, I don't have one, I don't need one. So that's capitalist, right? Everybody needs shoes, but you don't need a lot of shoes. Haircuts and nail salons. My wife cuts my hair. I do my own nails, right? However, you need some government regulation because there's health and safety concerns. So we're kind of building this government regulation section in here. In case I'm putting you to sleep, how about sex workers, right? It is legal in the state of Nevada, and the porn industry, of course, is very big in California. So sex workers, prostitutes, and porn stars definitely should be government funded because we need more. No. It definitely needs government regulation, otherwise, they get AIDS and other STDs. So the government is the prostitution industry. I don't know this from experience. In Nevada is government regulated, but since it's not a necessity, we're going to keep it on the capitalist side. Now, internet, we're still working that one out, right? Internet. Interesting. Should the government run the internet? Is it like a utility? Should it be in the middle here, or sort of government heavily regulated like electricity? just like the way the internet infrastructure versus social media, right? Social media, many social media companies famously kicked Donald Trump off. Should they be allowed to do that, or should the government say, you can't kick people off, you got to put everybody on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter? That's a good question, right? That's a good question. Right now, social media is definitely private. Very little government regulation. Media, news, definitely has to be private. Very dangerous when communist countries, hardcore socialist countries control the media, and when they control the information you get, you cannot cast an informed vote. You probably don't even get to vote there, and it's a rigged election. So media, First Amendment in America, definitely capitalism, private, over there. Artists, writers, they get some government funding, but generally they're over there. Oh, here's a good one. Plumbers. So if I have a pipe problem in my house, I have to pay a private company to come fix it. Should the government just fix my pipes for me? Probably not, because maybe I won't take care of my pipes if I get them fixed for free. However, I do have, if the government doesn't provide a system of sewage and water, people just dump their out in the backyard, and that's gross and unhygienic. So I do pay a water bill, but I get government water coming into my house. Water is something we all need. And when you live in a neighborhood like I do, the sewage has to get out. So in densely populated areas, villages, and cities, the government does generally run the water and sewer system, although people do pay into it. So that's definitely, we want socialism there. Most of you think every kid should go to school. Come on, really? What if a guy, a little guy owns a house and he doesn't have any kids, or a woman, they don't have any kids. Why do they have to pay $5,000 a year in school taxes when their kids aren't even going to the school? Why? Do you think about that? A lot of you want to be teachers, right? How come somebody, now I have stepkids, they're out of school now. But right now, my wife and I, we have Simon. He's smart enough. He doesn't need to go to school. But we don't send anybody to Ichabod Crane School up the road here, but we still pay every year about over $3,000-$4,000 to that school. And our kids, we don't have kids that go there. Well, we all benefit with an educated society, right? We all benefit from education. So we really don't want to privatize. Do you want to make all schools private? We don't really want to do that. And schools build communities. Schools build good workers and informed citizens. So there's a public good with schools. So even if my wife and I currently don't have any kids that go to school, I'm happy to pay my school taxes because it's teaching people to be productive, responsible members of society, getting some skills, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's interesting, isn't it? K through 12. College. Columbia Green is 80% socialist. All right, 80% of the money for Columbia Green comes from taxpayers. About 20% comes from your pockets. So 80% comes directly from the government, and then through financial aid. I count that as government funding. So some of you don't pay anything, which is fine with me. I wish Columbia Green was free for everybody, but. Or you can go to a private school and pay $80,000 a year for tuition, room, and board. Or come to Columbia Green for, I don't even know what it costs now, $3,000 a year? I don't know, I forget. College. Some countries pay you to go to college, right? Some countries pay you to go to college. In fact, we'll pick up with that in part 2 of our talk about socialism and government and unions and privatization, etc., etc., etc.